Welcome to JSA TV, your virtual newsroom for telecom professionals. Joining us here in Hotlanta for Telecom One-on-One, we are honored to have, once again, Mr. Allied Fiber himself, CEO Hunter Newby. Hunter, this is our series here at JSA TV, interviewing Hunter and getting his ideas on network access and building a plan for access, not just here in hotspots like Atlanta, but across the country.
Mm-hmm.
So you just wrote an article that was featured in Internet Telephony magazine, if I'm correct.
Yes.
And you spoke on President Obama's call for his executive order for broadband. Can you elaborate further on this?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me again. Good to see you in Atlanta. Great to be on JSA TV. Yes, so President signed an executive order in June that did really two things within the order itself, and then something else I think that's a little bit more profound in a broad sense. One component of the order spoke about opening up federal property, rights of way, and roads for broadband infrastructure. And the other part of the order was sort of a call to bring together different federal agencies to work in harmony so that it would make the application process for access to those rights of way easier. So that independent companies can invest and build what the president called broadband infrastructure, which is really a euphemism for fiber.
Right.
So again, I split those two things up, and I'm a bit particular about it because they are really two different things. The rights of way and using the rights of way, but then also the agency component of it, and how do you really get all these different agencies, Department of Transportation, this, that, whatever, to come together. Very difficult task. So I think the executive order was aspirational. It doesn't actually mandate anything has to happen. It sort of says that this should happen, and getting those parts to come together will be difficult. But he's on the right track. It makes a lot of sense, and I think what it does now in the broad stroke is that it highlights the fact that there's a real serious issue in the United States with fiber infrastructure investment.
Recognizing that there's a problem.
Huge problem.
Huge problem.
So his actual tagline for it was, "We can't wait." And I found that to be really interesting. We can't wait, 3 words. So saying that we can't wait, saying that we're waiting implies that we're waiting for something that we need. It's not a we don't need it, we need it, we're waiting. And it's got to be important because we're waiting for it. And that also implies that we don't have it.
That's right.
Okay, so he's saying we don't have it. And when he says we can't wait, means there's no time to lose. So we're under pressure to get something that we don't have.
Well, let's face it, we're in a global race for access.
Yep.
And we're lagging way behind in the race that we created in many ways.
It's true, yeah. Really, if you go all the way back to the Bell telephone system, and you see how the funding for the Bell telephone system from a capital expenditure perspective was created by a fixed rate of return, sort of as a tax that came back to the company. For every dollar they spent, they got a fixed rate of return. That was their capital budget to build new infrastructure. That's how the Bell telephone system really was built out as a homogeneous standard system across the United States. Very important, lasted for over a century. Then with the introduction of the public internet, the internet protocol through DARPA in the 60s, the protocol itself now has sort of escaped globally, and others are applying it more effectively than we are, largely because the United States is a large country and it is a big geography to cover, so that means that it requires more capital to build it all out, and we're served by regional Bell operating companies. So Ma Bell was broken up. Now we have regional operators. So there's no single entity that's responsible for the investment in the fiber infrastructure for the entire nation. We lack that. And because we lack that, you look at what the executive order said. We can't wait because we need what we lack. And really there needs to be an entity to fill those shoes, and that entity needs to be funded, and there needs to be a plan. So just opening up rights of way, great. What company, where's the money, what's the plan, what's the timing, how's it going to get built, and all these questions start to come out. And what we're looking at is a fragmented, fractionalized country with network operators in pockets that don't all homogeneously connect on some superstructure of fiber that's desperately needed, that can be accessed at reasonable rates and terms and standard interconnection processes and points and what have you. That doesn't exist. And then you look at the M&A that's taken place here in the past 2 years, where 30 plus logos of independent fiber companies have all been consolidated. So we're actually going in the wrong direction in that regard.
So that brings us to my key question here for you.
Yeah.
What is the Allied Fiber plan for America's access?
So the Allied Fiber plan is really in a similar sense to follow in the, not so much follow, lead, but we understand what the president's saying with the executive order. We can't wait. Allied Fiber believes that. Allied Fiber started in 2008 with the same vision. We knew that this infrastructure was lacking. Now, our plan specifically is to build the fiber superstructure that allows the regional networks to tap into a fiber system with associated co-location facilities that are all carrier neutral, and that allows them to basically have thoroughfare throughout the U.S. They can go to the next state or the next Allied Colo or all the way to the other coast if they wish. Or they can just build into one of our facilities and buy lit services from the other providers that are in those facilities that are leasing or IRUing dark fiber from us to get there.
So take us through your network philosophy system. What is, and we're showing a graphic right now.
Yeah.
So tell us, take us through it. What's the blue line? What's the red line?
Right. So again, our mission is to build the superstructure to link the subsea and connect continents through the United States. So what you're seeing in this graphic is what we affectionately call the cartoon. You see it starts with the subsea landing point, and it shows two different colors, a red and a blue, and those represent, in our world, two different types of fiber, what we call long haul and what we call short haul. And short haul is really just to represent a type of fiber that can be physically accessed on a very short increment. And our increment is actually 3,000 feet. That's the spacing for splicing. The long haul fiber is really not meant to be messed with, but for the pre-engineered splice points, which is sort of real lengths, but the Allied Fiber co-location facilities, which are spaced every 60 miles or 100 kilometers. Those are the junction points. So think of it as a highway system. You have an express lane and you have a local lane. The local lane is the short haul fiber. That's the lane where you can get on and off. So there's a lot of existing networks out there in the U.S., CLECs, RLECs, ILECs, cable companies, whatever, regional operators. They can tap into us in those splice points. So they already are out there. They can meet us at a handhole. We can splice them. They can come into our system. They can then come into an Allied Fiber colo facility. And from there, they can place their equipment. That becomes a new node on their network. And now they can distribute out from there. And they can also pick up traffic and aggregate in from there. They can have as many access points as they wish. They can be in as many co-location facilities as they wish. We are strictly physical air, carrier neutral, and we're essentially in the real estate business. So our mission is to build the superstructure and unify the disparate, fractionalized, regionalized networks in the U.S., carrier and enterprise alike, and provide a standard operating platform for all of them to connect to. Now, we don't solve everyone's problems, and that's sort of what I was getting at before with the senses of the executive order and how that ties in. We have a defined route that we've selected. It's a superstructure ring linking the North and South Pacific, the Atlantic, and the Caribbean subsea landings. We don't build off the right-of-way. We're not a regional network operator or a metro network operator. There's some states that we don't have planned to go to. That's not that we're slighting them. It's just that it's not on the critical path of keeping traffic flowing between the continents through the United States. There are regional operators that already exist in those areas. We obviously encourage them to build dark fiber and lease it and sort of, if they're already doing that, continue to do so. Or if they're not, build infrastructure that ties those areas into us, because we can't be everything to everyone.
So in many ways, you're asking those local providers to replicate your network
Yes.
philosophy regionally and then connect into your major superhighway.
Yes, it's part replicating our philosophy, but it's also just, in a sense, for a lot of them to continue doing what they're already doing. Right. There are many metro and regional dark fiber network providers already today. We're not inventing anything new. Fiber isn't new, colo facilities, regens aren't new.
But your placement and your access.
That's, well, for our route, the superstructure, that's new. Right. Think of a metro network. Think of how it's designed in a city with lots of access points in manholes and in and out of buildings. Think of that now, instead of as the micro, as the macro. We look at the United States as a metro. We look at the cities in the United States as buildings in our metro. And there's a lot of incremental access points for cell towers and rural networks and distributed data centers and what have you, so that this is one giant system that you can count on, that wherever you connect, it'll be the same website, the same tech support, the same standard for splicing, the same rate per mile for fiber, the same rate for a cabinet for colo, the same rate that you're going to pay to interconnect to another party. The only thing that'll really change by region is the cost of power, which is all regulated anyway, so it's just going to be passed through. These are not data centers, they're not meant for servers, they're just meant for interconnection, and that's what facilitates the flow of packets between endpoints like mobile phones, people at home, and the data centers where the content's stored.
Because the data centers, modular data centers, the fiber-fed wireless towers, they're all feeding into your network.
Exactly.
Well done. Well, thank you, Hunter, for coming to
Thank you.
Telecom 101 and JSA TV. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in to JSA TV. Stay tuned. We'll have more from Hunter in our next. This is part of a series, so make sure you're watching JSA TV.